Hello and welcome to Your Exceptional Life. Marcus Pearce here with you. Thank you so much for joining me, particularly if you've been one of the loyal listeners that has been asking for a couple of months, when is Your Exceptional Life resuming? I have been in a bit of a cave the last little while, putting together some new projects, coming up with some new ideas, doing a lot of thinking and a lot of philosophizing, as I like to say. And this is part of the new ideas, part of the way forward. And what I'm going to do on Your Exceptional Life is not just come up with new content. What I really have been feeling an urge to, and it's really come to me over the last week or so, is to just share more of what's going on in my daily life. Every week I am planning on giving you a podcast or a video or a blog, all three if that's what you like, to really just share with you what's going on in my life. As you know, a massive part of my message is don't niche your life. Don't just master your life purpose, career. Don't just master your health or your wealth or your growth. You really have to put all of the pieces of the puzzle into your life. Don't put all your eggs into the family basket, but forget about your me time, your health, any career dreams you have. And so naturally enough, the best accountability of my business is that if I'm not living my exceptional life, then I'm not congruent with my message. And so when I was thinking of how I can really share the power of the message, without sounding egotistical, I thought, well, I'll share what's going on in my life. I'll share the victories, but I'll also share the challenges. The thing that really bugs me about social media and a lot of the media these days is that it's so one-sided. So I want to share with you the ups and the downs. I don't want it to be this look at me podcast, because that's not the intention at all. I want to share with you what I'm learning. I want to share with you some stories. I want to share with you all elements of the Exceptional Life Blueprint, and I'll go through each of those 8 elements every single week. And again, as much for me because it's great accountability, but for you to see that really you can live your exceptional life. You can put all 8 pieces into the puzzle. I'm just a regular guy, and I really just want to share with you how I go about it on a weekly basis. So without any further ado, let's go into what I've been reading. I'm not going to go in any particular order every week. I'm just going to go in what I want to do from beginning to end. Here is what I've been reading. The first thing that's really grabbed me this week is a new book, and that is Mastery by Robert Greene. Now, I'll pop it up here so you can actually see it whilst I'm talking about it. But Robert Greene has a classical studies background. He's a playwright, has worked in Hollywood and all the rest of it. But I first came across Robert Greene stuff when I was co-hosting Inside the Champion's Mind with Lawrence Tam. We did 88 podcasts together, all on mindset, did some wonderful episodes. And I remember LT talking about reading the 48 Laws of Power, which is a Robert Greene book, and maybe even the 50th Law, which Greene co-wrote with 50 Cent. But I have loved Mastery. I'm only about 60 pages in, and 2 stories in particular stand out for me, and I want to share just those briefly with you. Both of them are around life purpose and the challenges that we can experience from our family. The first person featured is Charles Darwin. Now, Charles Darwin, if you think about survival of the fittest, if you think about evolution, a lot of those theories came from Charles Darwin. But here's the deal. Charles Darwin's dad thought that he was ridiculous, that Charles was ridiculous as a child collecting specimens, whether it was lizards or dead birds or snakes or crabs or whatever it was. Charles Darwin, all he ever wanted to do was collect specimens, but Charles Darwin's dad didn't think that there was no career for that. So Charles Darwin's dad wanted him to go to med school. Charles Darwin went to med school, hated it, came home, and then Charles's dad said, right son, you're going to work in the church. We've got you a safe job, it'll pay the bills, you'll work in the church. Charles Darwin did not have, couldn't do a thing with it. Darwin ended up going to university. It may have been Cambridge, but it may not have been. I could be totally wrong there, forget the details, but he was at a university. One of his lecturers knew that Charles had a passion for collecting specimens, and the lecturer found out about the Beagle, which was the name of the ship which was going around the world for 5 years to go and learn about life and life on other islands and discover more of the world. And the lecturer knew that Charles was excited about this. Charles realized that he genuinely wanted to do it, but he was scared of his dad and what his dad may think. Naturally enough, his dad said, absolutely not, you are going to work in the church. Charles was like, okay, I'll work in the church. Cut a long story short, Charles had a change of heart, found a way to convince his dad that he would go onto the boat, and cut a long story short, couldn't stand the boat to begin with, learnt a hell of a lot about getting on with other people, obviously learned a hell of a lot about how living things work and evolve, and came back a different man. And I just think it's a genuinely wonderful story of someone that really stood up to the misgivings of family. And I know so many people that I work with are scared to write their own script because they feel like their parents in particular want to write a script for them. And so consider that for yourself. If someone like Charles Darwin can do it, and someone like Mozart can do it. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's dad, Leopold, said, "Son, you are going to play the piano and play concerts." And Mozart did that for many years, but eventually Mozart became fed up with just playing the piano. He realized that he was a composer at heart, not just a pianist. And against his dad's wishes, he did not return from a trip to Salzburg, I think it was. Sarah and I went to Salzburg on our European trips, and anyway, Mozart went to Salzburg to perform, didn't come home, and against his father's wishes, became a composer and composed with feverish tenacity. And even though he died young, I think he might have been 35 when he died, left an incredible legacy pretty much at the price of his relationship with his dad. And from what I understand, they never healed that relationship. His dad never forgave his son, but Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart would not let his relationship with his dad get in the way of his life purpose. And so it's something for you to consider. If it's good enough for Darwin and it's good enough for Mozart to make major, for want of a better term, sacrifices, then I just think it's something for us, particularly if you're looking at the roadblocks or challenges to living the life of your dreams. Consider what other people have done to do that. All right, so that's the book I'm reading at the moment. The podcast I'm listening to, as I tend to read a good book, I want to listen to the author speak. So I've listened to 2 great podcasts this week, both interviews with Robert Greene. One was with James Altucher, who has a very awkward interview style and is a TV and radio journalist that used to pretty much tell and show hosts how to interview. I find it awkward to listen to James Altucher sometimes, but I love his tenacity and thirst for knowledge, and I love the way that he has, he's unedited in the way that he asks questions. Sometimes I think he comes across as rude, but I know it's not his intention. But the thing is, he asks questions that a lot of us wouldn't ask. And so it's a great interview with James Altucher and also with Aubrey Marcus. I enjoyed that interview. So I'll put links to that in the blog and the show notes. All right, let's talk about movement. The one thing I'm loving with movement at the moment is a push-up challenge. Now, I went down to Melbourne recently, got adjusted by my great mate Damien Christoph. Damo noticed, I told Damo I'd been symptomatic, particularly when I've been doing speaking engagements, and he was observing that my upper body strength was quite weak. And so Damo's great at pull-ups, which he suggested, but I don't have a pull-up bar at home, and our doorways in here aren't conducive to those inside pull-up bars. So I'm doing a push-up challenge, and I really want to do 100 consecutive push-ups. Cut a long story short, I started off with 23 consecutive push-ups, moved that up to 30, and I'm now up to 35. The way that I'm going about this, which is a 6-day-a-week program, I've put links in the show notes. I'm doing about 1,500 push-ups a week, which I'm pumped with, physically pumped, mentally pumped, but I'm actually feeling a whole lot stronger as well. I also like to do a lot of aerobic exercise, so I go for a run Monday, Wednesday, Friday along the beach, and then for flexibility, I do yoga, or Egoscue workouts, which again, I'll put links in the show notes. I'll even link in the 2 yoga workouts I did this week, which was hip and hamstring, because they're weaknesses for mine, particularly doing a lot of sitting. If you do a lot of sitting in your work, I would highly recommend that you do some yoga for the hips and hamstrings as well. Family. Let's talk about family stuff. Been a bit going on at Pierce HQ. Maya had all of last week off school, and what started off as a fever then became ulcers in the mouth, then became severe gingivitis, and by the time we decided to take Maya to the dentist on Friday, Sarah had a bit of mama guilt around not doing something about it earlier, but we just thought it was one small thing after another. It became aware to us that Maya had acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, ANUG for short. If you think about gingivitis, ulcers, necrotizing, which is dying, and acute, which was very painful, and the fact that Maya's 7, you could probably gather she was in a world of hurt. I don't have any photos to show. That would have been mean to take those photos. I don't have any before and after photos, but I'll tell you this. We went to the dentist. Dentist said, in the nicest possible way, if this doesn't improve over the weekend, Maya, you will need antibiotics. Now, Maya has never had antibiotics. She probably doesn't know exactly what they are. She does have probiotics, so she kind of gathered that it's the opposite of them. So then she's asking lots of questions. She became very determined in almost an angry way that she was not going to have antibiotics. And so I think as soon as she made that decision, I genuinely feel that that was probably the most important nutrient in her healing. The power of belief is phenomenal. I share a lot about that with aging, but she was so determined. We went off to Mullum Herbals, which is a herbal shop in Mullumbimby, got a really powerful tincture. All I remember is that it had myrrh in it. I know it had some other powerful herbs, but it had a lot of myrrh. It was very hot. It was disgusting. I supported Maya by having fire tonic with her. So I had a swig of fire tonic. I've got a couple of links to what fire tonic is if you're not sure of what it is, but essentially it's ACV and chilies and a lot of other funky stuff. Maya had her herbs. She washed it down with some coconut water. We did that 7 times a day on the Saturday and the Sunday. She was so determined. She did some saltwater swishes. She even had some cod liver oil. If you've got baby boomer parents and beyond, they will tell you that cod liver oil was almost like a punishment growing up. She had some Metagenics zinc and vitamin C, orange powder, which was a suggestion based on improving her immunity because it was working so hard on the gums. We suggested oil pulling, but she had no interest in that, so we didn't push the barrel. But she did an incredible job. We got to the dentist on Monday. The gums were a whole lot more pink. She still had some flaps over the molars. The theory is, or suggestion from the dentist is that because she's got 4 molars growing, a couple of wobbly teeth, she just got a lot going on in her mouth, and that was the major cause of the ANUG. But all credit to Maya, but it was a hard week for Sarah. She had, Tommy, not sleeping all that well, her 7-year-old home every day of the week, and Darby was only at preschool 2 days for the week, so poor Sarah Bear was up against it. Didn't envy her role there whatsoever. But again, I want to share the challenge just because it wasn't a flowing, beautiful week at PSHQ. But again, no one was dying. It was just a challenge for the family, and we all got through it. We all got through it. Maya's been at school every day, or 4 days this week, and even though she's been a bit more emotionally volatile, she's been incredible. All right, life purpose. What am I working on at the moment? Generally, at the moment, I'm working on 3 projects. And again, you might find this incredibly boring, so if you do, apologies. I'd love you to let me know if you're finding this stuff boring or not. I share it because, again, I get so many questions about all areas of life. I'm just sharing what I'm working on. And what's working and what's not working. So the first thing I'm working on, as you saw me bring the slide up earlier, is Ikaria 2018. It's our longevity experience, which Damo and I are running for the 2nd time on this Greek island known as the island where people forget to die. Now we had, I think it was 7 or 9 paid attendees for 2016. We're already up to 14 for 2018, which is progress. So on a business level, it's great because there's progress. I was much more conscious in the way that we promoted this 2nd time around. There's been a gap in the last 4 to 6 weeks. Haven't really done much on the promotions. Kind of really been serving and fulfilling those 14 that have registered and supporting them with itineraries and all of that stuff. But my project now is really to fill the last 6 spaces. So I want to raise awareness again, maybe let people know that don't know about it. We haven't promoted it that much, and so my work at the moment is on strategizing the best way to go about that. Project number 2, which is probably a higher priority than project number 1, is increasing my corporate engagement. So a big aha moment for me over the last 6 months has really been that as much as I love a lot of my public work, which is running my annual events and doing a lot of speaking, a lot of my tribe are generally mainly women, but men as well, who are working and really working on, for want of a better term, work-life balance. How to be great at their work, but also great at their family, and be great at their health, and be good with their money, and all of the components of life. And you know me, some people think I'm overly idealist, but the consequences of not being great with just one area of life are disastrous. I use examples of Steve Jobs, of Kerry Packer, of men and women which you know that aren't famous, that have been mediocre, had mediocre standards in their marriage or with their kids and not spending enough time with them, or in their own personal growth and being stale and being made redundant and not knowing what to do. Anything that is substandard becomes a high consequence if we let it go for long enough. And so a big thing for me is I realized a lot of my tribe are going to work. And my view now is I want to meet them at work rather than asking them to take their weekends off. Now, again, I'll still do my annual event, ELB Live in Byron, but I want to do more corporate work. And that's been incredibly frustrating, challenging, but exciting. Growing my brand, what's my offer, what are my trainings called, how do I structure it, all of the rest of it has been, again, it's been character building. So I've been making a lot of contacts, really calling people I know, asking for introductions to certain companies. And again, it's been a wonderful process to go through. One thing that it's almost like starting a whole new business again, which has been great, but it's been a wonderful week on that front. I've got some work coming up with the NAB, probably Australia's biggest employer. That's coming up in October. And whilst I've been working on, brochures and what's my core offer and my messaging and the rest, this work with NAB came from a podcast interview I did with the 180 Nutrition team, Guy and Stu, and that's been the catalyst for getting this gig. And so it's just a good reminder to me that I don't have to have all of the flashy flyers, even though I've kind of got them in the process and some of them already done. That's not necessarily the number one key to growing the corporate stuff. So lots of good stuff happening in the background there. And then the third project in the life purpose side of things is upping my online presence. So I used to be with one platform, database, CRM. I've transferred over to ClickFunnels, which is not necessarily the new kid on the block, but they're doing some wonderful things. They've probably gone past the new kid on the block. They're really dominating. If you're into the online business side of things, it's got ClickFunnels, Infusionsoft, Ontraport. I used to be with Ontraport. I'm now with ClickFunnels. So I'm transferring my whole Exceptional Life Blueprint online program and my other free programs from one to the other at the moment. Laborious exercise. I could kind of delegate it, but I also feel like I want to do it myself. And so again, that's a process that I'm working through at the moment. All right, nutrition. So nutrition, here's what's going on at the moment. Now, I'm just going to kind of lay a few of the staples down here because this is the first time I'm sharing this in your exceptional life. If you don't know me or don't know me well, you probably don't know my regular morning tea is a chocolate pudding cup. It's my own recipe. It's been developed over the last 7 or 8 years. It started off with a recipe that Sarah gave me for my birthday, which was a tablespoon of cacao, tahini, agave nectar, and water. But that has evolved. We no longer go anywhere near agave nectar. We actually have less than a tablespoon of honey. We have more than a tablespoon of tahini. I have peppermint oil, shredded coconut, cacao nibs, raw cacao buttons, whatever I want, berries, whatever's going. I've got a video of how I do that on the blog there. Again, if you know me well, you can have breakfast at my house anytime, as long as you're in for scrambled eggs and sauteed greens with a bit of rawness like cucumber, tomato, sauerkraut, avocado, dehydrated olives. Kids got some halloumi cheese this morning. Breakfast and morning tea, always a staple. And my mantra for 2017, when in doubt, sauerkraut. That's my nutrition mantra. That's about as much as my nutritional goals go for this year. In terms of dinners, which is largely Sarah's domain, we had a great eggplant masala during the week. I say great for the parents. The kids were not into it at all. Tommy was kind of into it, but Maya and Darby, no chance. So that's all right. Win for the parents. Wealth stuff. Now, wealth, I'm doing a lot of organization at the moment. A lot of this has come from the back end of a recent mastery event I ran. So for those of you that don't know, I've got Exceptional Life Blueprint online program and live events, but then I have Exceptional Life Blueprint Mastery. And so I have a mastery event called Exceptional Wealth and Productivity. I was running this event with my clients in Currumbin recently, and the story came up around Scott Pape, also known as the Barefoot Investor, and Scott Pape's house burnt down in one of the Victorian bushfires, and he pretty much lost everything. I've put a link to the story in the show notes here, but essentially from that story, which one of my clients shared, I've just gone all out on getting majorly organized. At the moment, that organization is just having direct clarity on assets, liabilities, income, and expenses, which in the past, I've only really done that every 6 to 12 months, but now I've turned it into a ritual, which I check in on once a month on a broader term, and then once a week particularly on the expenses. So for me, I'm a big fan of unexpected expenses. I'm not a fan of incurring them, but I'm a big fan of becoming aware of them. Some suggestions are that around 20% of our expenses are unexpected. But if you prepare more, then you don't have as many unexpected expenses. And they can be things like having your tires replaced. They could be things like birthday parties, weddings and wedding gifts, any random flights, whether they're for going on a 40th birthday or a funeral, depending on the phase of life that you're in. You may need to be preparing for, flights for a funeral once a year, or a wedding, or a 40th, or whatever. So a lot of unexpected expenses can come up. But Scott Pape had a major unexpected expense, and that was his entire house burning down. So link is there in the show notes. And lastly, bit of spirit, bit of life purpose, all mixed together. This is one that I feel so strongly on. It's probably my driving force at the moment. It is jazzing me up so much, and it is really a whole new lifestyle shift for me. And that is, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I have joined what Robin Sharma calls the 5 a.m. club. I was reacquainted with Robin Sharma's work when I was in Melbourne recently doing a talk for Well and You, the beautiful people at Well and You. And I was doing a talk, and I'll just pop a little video up here because I think I've got it here handy. This is a video that Well and You did at a different talk I did for one of their breakfast workshops. If you're in Melbourne, I highly recommend going to a Well and You Atelier workshop. I've been fortunate enough to do a talk there, which is what this video is showing. Nat Kringoudis recently did a talk there. Damien Christoph has done a talk there. All types of health and wellness, personal growth topics, Well and You cover at their Atelier breakfasts. They're not expensive. You get the best breakfast in Melbourne. It's absolutely awesome. But one thing that I was doing a talk for Well and You and their workplace clients recently, there was another speaker there by the name of Catherine van der Meulen. Now, Catherine's family are responsible for, I think, founding the Supre clothing empire. But Catherine shared her trials and tribulations in waking up at 5 a.m. Catherine also has children, which I can relate to, which has been an excuse of mine in the past, but she shared it, and I really became enamored again to join the 5 a.m. club. And I say again because pretty much every year I say to Sarah, babe, I'm going to start getting up at 5 o'clock again. And she just laughs because I've been saying it ever since I read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Robin Sharma's probably most well-known book, probably 10 years ago. And I've said it every year, but this has been the clincher. I am living by the philosophy that imagine if I only had 180 days to live, what would change in my life? One of those things is I would want to write a book. It doesn't have to be published, but it's a manuscript, and it's going to take me 180 days to write the manuscript. I've got my annual live event broken down into subheadings. There's about 110, 120 subheadings. I work on one a day, and I get up at 5 a.m. every morning. To do that, I've got a ritual there. I play my favorite classical music from the shift. I put on some green tea. It's quiet. I get done by about 5 to 6. I start exercising at 6 o'clock. I then swap over with Sarah at 7. And by the time that happens, I've lived my exceptional life. I've kicked off life purpose. I've moved by 7 a.m. I'm making breakfast, nutrition. I've got social time with my family. You can probably hear my family in the background at the moment. I've got good time with family, growth. Well, I've been learning so much in the morning. So I've really kicked off. And then it's a very spiritual experience being up at that time of the day. Really thoroughly enjoyable, and I absolutely love it. So that kind of covers off the 8 areas of your exceptional life. Just giving you a weekly snapshot. I know this has been probably longer than I intended, but I've really enjoyed giving it to you. I really hope it's added value to your life. I would love your feedback. Send me an email, marcus@marcuspearce.com.au. If you're watching this on Facebook, pop it in the Facebook comments. If you're on the blog, pop a comment there. However you want to get in touch with me, let me know what difference this video has made, because I want to know, or if it's been on a podcast or however you've listened to it, I want to know what difference it makes to you. What changes you've made, what tips you found powerful, maybe what books you want to read from the ones that I've suggested. But I'd love to know if this is valuable. I intend to share this with you every week, just give you a snapshot of my life from the week, give you updates on all those areas, and again, really hope you have found this as valuable as much as I have enjoyed giving this to you. Thanks again for your support of my message. Thanks again for listening, watching, and reading. And until next time, as always, continue to make the rest of your life the best of your life.